1636. A Dutch sailor finds a bulb sitting on a merchant's counter. To him, it looks like a snack. He peels it. He eats it with his herring. He didn't just eat an onion. He ate a Semper Augustus. In today's money, that breakfast cost $3 million. Welcome to the Dutch Golden Age, a time when a flower, a literal biological sex organ of a plant, became more valuable than a human life. This is Tulip Mania. But forget the history books. They tell you it was a financial bubble. I'm here to tell you, it was a collective psychological breakdown. I am Psyche of power. Today, we aren't studying flowers. We are studying the terrifying architecture of the human mind when it loses its grip on reality. Why did rational men trade their houses for a root? The answer isn't greed. It's much darker. To understand the tulip, we must first understand the mimetic desire, a concept developed by philosopher René Girard. Girard argued that we don't want things because they are valuable. We want them because others want them. In the 1630s, the tulip became the ultimate mimetic object. It was scarce, it was beautiful, and most importantly, your neighbor was getting rich off it. But here is the first cognitive reversal. The very beauty that drove the price was actually a disease. The broken patterns, the stripes that made tulips expensive, were caused by a mosaic virus. The flower was dying. Logic would suggest a sick plant is worth less. Human psychology dictated that the more broken it was, the more divine it became. This was the birth of hyperreality, a term coined by Jane Baudrillard. The moment the representation of the thing becomes more real than the thing itself. By 1636, people weren't even trading tulips anymore. They were trading pieces of paper promising tulips that hadn't even bloomed yet. This is Act 1, the illusion of value. In 1633, a single bulb of the Viceroy was traded for 2,500 florins. What does that buy you? 2 lasts of wheat, 4 of rye, 4 fat oxen, 8 fat swine, 12 sheep, 2 hogsheads of wine, 4 tons of beer, 1,000 pounds of cheese, a bed, a suit of clothes, and a silver beaker. All of that for one bowl. Why? Because of the Semmelweis reflex. The Semmelweis reflex is the tendency to reject new evidence because it contradicts established norms. The norm in 1636 was that tulips only go up. To suggest otherwise was social suicide. You weren't just a trader. You were part of a college. These weren't universities. They were smoky-in rooms where the florists met. It was a cult of consensus. When the bell rang, a deal was made. No money changed hands. Only Wagenkolb, wine money. Here is the first reversal. We think bubbles are driven by the elite. But the Tulip Mania was driven by the middle class trying to escape their fate. For the first time in history, social mobility felt like it was just one bulb away. The fear of missing out isn't modern, it's biological. We have a psychological drive called social proof. If everyone is running toward a cliff, your brain tells you there must be a party at the bottom. Notice the names. They weren't named Red Flower 5-4. They were given titles of nobility. General. Admiral. Buying the bulb was buying the status. It was a psychological bypass of the class system. But Act 2 is where the social contagion turns into a fever. In late 1636, the bubble moved from the professional florists to the general public. This is the point of no return. People sold the tools of their trade to buy wind handle, the trade of wind. Why did they believe it would last? Because of temporal discounting. Our brains are hardwired to value immediate rewards over long-term stability. The now is a siren. The future is a ghost. They weren't buying flowers. They were buying a version of themselves that was rich, respected, and invincible. But then came the Asch conformity moment. In Solomon Asch's famous experiment, people would knowingly state a lie just to fit in with the group. In the Dutch taverns, if you doubted the value of a bulb, you weren't smart. You were an outcast. You were killing the vibe. We call this groupthink. It's a psychological cocoon that protects you from reality until reality becomes too loud to ignore. February 1637. The peak of the mountain. Prices had risen 2,000% in a month. A single Semper Augustus was now worth more than a lifetime of labor for an entire village. Here is the second reversal. The crash didn't start with a panic. It started with a silence. February 3rd. Haarlem. A routine auction. The auctioneer calls for a bid. Nothing. He lowers the price. Still nothing. In that moment, the social contract vanished. The hyperreality shattered. The piece of paper was no longer a Semper Augustus. It was just a piece of paper. The bulb was no longer a general. It was just a root. This is the liquidity trap of the soul, when you realize that value only exists if someone else believes in it. Panic didn't spread like a fire. It spread like a frost. Within days, the courts were flooded. I have a contract, they screamed, but the judges looked away. The Dutch government realized the entire economy was built on a hallucination. Their solution, to ignore it. They ruled that these were bets, not debts. Imagine waking up and realizing your life savings, your house, and your honor were traded for a flower that is currently rotting in a box. Act 3. The aftermath. History tells us the crash ruined the Dutch economy. But here's the third reversal. It didn't. The macro economy was fine. The Dutch Golden Age continued for decades. The only thing that truly died was the trust. This is the broken window of the soul. Once a society realizes how easily it can be fooled, the collective psyche changes forever. Look at Dutch art after 1637. The flamboyance is gone. The Calvinist austerity returns. They were ashamed. They tried to screw-up the Tulip Mania from their history. It became a cautionary tale told to children, a moral failure. But was it a moral failure, or is it just Pareto's circulation of elites? Vilfredo Pareto argued that society is a series of circulations. The Tulip Mania was just a messy, violent attempt to reshuffle the deck of wealth. We call it irrational exuberance. But that's a clinical term for a very human feeling, the desire to be the one who knew. We don't buy the asset, we buy the secret. The secret that you are smarter than the system. The secret that you have found the shortcut to the top of the pyramid. Today, you can buy a tulip bulb for a few cents. They are beautiful, but they aren't special. What is your tulip? Is it a meme coin? An eye stop? A luxury watch? Consider the Diderot effect. Denis Diderot, the French philosopher, wrote that getting one luxury item creates a spiral of consumption. The tulip was the first domino. Once they bought the flower, they had to live the life that a flower owner deserves. They weren't just betting on prices. They were betting on a lifestyle they couldn't afford. History is a graveyard of things people thought were worth dying for. The flower survives. The greed survives. Only the object changes. 1720, 1840, 1999, 2008, 2021. We are on a hedonic treadmill. We run toward the next tulip thinking it will finally be the one to make us feel whole. So, what is the lesson? Don't be stupid. No. The lesson is more terrifying than that. The lesson is that value is a shared hallucination. If we all stop believing in the dollar tomorrow, it becomes trash. If we all start believing in pebbles, they become gold. To beat the bubble, you have to exit the mimetic loop. You have to want things for what they are, not for what they represent. But that is the hardest thing for a human to do, because without our status symbols, who are we? In 1637, the Dutch didn't lose their money. They lost their masks. And underneath the mask, just a frightened primate trying to be special in a world that doesn't care. The tulip didn't lie to the Dutch. The Dutch lied to themselves. What are you lying to yourself about today? Stay sharp. This is Psyche of Power. See you in the next autopsy.